Testing. Meow.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Popa, Executive Director of the Mainstream Coalition. And on behalf of myself and our team, thank you for joining us for Mainstream Live, our series of conversations with figures in Kansas politics, advocacy, and community building. For over 25 years, Mainstream Coalition has been advocating for common sense government and healthy communities in Kansas. You can learn more about Mainstream and our body of work at mainstreamcoalition.org. And while you're there, please consider joining. Each membership contribution goes a long way in supporting our advocacy and outreach efforts across the state. And now, I would like to introduce my guest today, Kansas Representative Cindy Holscher of the 16th District. Representative Holscher, hi.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Good, good.
Great. Thank you for being here today.
Great to be here. And maybe the sun will come out this afternoon. We'll see what happens.
Right? It'd be nice. Already getting some flooding over in my neck of the woods.
Oh yeah, our backyard has puddles and little little ponds and areas, but it's all good.
Always wanted an in-ground pool, just not this way.
Yeah, this is the year.
So let's cut to the chase.
Yeah.
Did this session go differently than you thought it might?
Not really.
Okay.
Actually, apart from the whole pandemic part,
Sure.
but honestly, it kind of went the way I thought it would. This past session was probably one of the most disappointing that I've been through. And when the election returns came back from 2018, I had a feeling it wouldn't be a real good couple of sessions coming up. Because in Kansas, we actually went backwards overall in respect to the number of moderates and Democrats, that coalition that we had, versus the far, far right. So in 2016, we had a pretty good semblance of mods and Democrats that worked together. But like I said, that went backwards then in 2018. And unlike most every other state in the union, Kansas actually went backwards in regards to female representation. So some of those waves that we thought would manifest in Kansas did not happen here. When I got my list of assignments, my committee assignments, and I saw the breakdown of the committees, that's when I was pretty sure we were in trouble. You could tell very easily that committees were stacked to prevent work from being done. For instance, I have served on the healthcare committee. That was one of the first committees I started on once I was elected. We did a decent amount of work in 2017 and 2018. However, in 2018, 2019 sessions, we did almost nothing. In fact, this past session on the healthcare committee, we worked no bills at all. And we had ample time. I mean, committees meet throughout January and February. So there was plenty of time there for us to have hearings on bills, but we didn't have a single hearing, didn't work a single bill in healthcare. That was by design. That committee was headed by an extremist who is against Medicaid expansion. So she was put there to prevent it from going forward. And the committee was stacked to prevent a vote from allowing it to go forward from there. So sadly, time was not used wisely there. And there are many things that we could have addressed, many issues, but either we didn't meet or there were just, quote, informational sessions, no action taken.
So we all know that the Medicare expansion bill that was put forward was bipartisan, right?
Yeah.
So Governor and Representative Denning. Did you think that would move since it had some bipartisan support? No?
No, Senator Denning had never, ever cast a vote in favor of Medicaid expansion. Only when I announced that I was running for that spot did he decide to start to show support for it. So it was no surprise then that he indicated he was going to try to work on the bill. Interestingly, the bill that was rolled out then as the compromise bill with he and the governor, it's not that much different than the bill we had passed in the House the year before. You can't do a lot of changes to Medicaid expansion. It's a federally mandated program that has a lot of guidelines. So there's a few tweaks to it, but still Medicaid expansion has to be in a pretty particular form for it to go forward. When he had when we had the rollout then in Topeka, a lot of people got very excited. They're like, okay, we're going to get Medicaid expansion. And I told a few people, I said, wait a minute. Again, the guy's never voted for it in the past, never supported it, has been the person to stop it. And additionally, we knew that the Value Them Both Amendment was coming, the Abortion Prohibition Amendment. So my instinct was that, okay, that's going to be used to give him cover. That essentially it's going to be said, okay, we've got to get this through before we do Medicaid expansion. And guess what? That's exactly what happened in the session. That's exactly where we are at this point. At one point, there was a news story that basically said that Senator Wagle, the president of the Senate, who ultimately she and Senator Denning controlled the agenda. There was a news story that said she told him, Senator Denning, you go out there and say you support Medicaid expansion, and I'll push the Value Them Both Amendment and put it out there that that has to pass before we do anything else. So like I said, it really was no surprise at all. And then when Senator Denning said he wasn't going to run, guess what? Last week he stopped Medicaid expansion again.
Right. So you just mentioned last week, a lot of stuff went on or didn't go on in that marathon session, that horrible session that you're all called back to. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? Because I think it might be confusing to some people because there were so many moving pieces. There were a lot of shenanigans that happened. My words, not yours. A lot of shenanigans. And there's a motion to non-concur, which effectively, as I understand it, cut out Democrats from a voice in deciding what made it to the floor.
Essentially, I'll back up to sine die, the final day of session is usually just kind of a formal day where people who are departing give their farewell speeches. There typically is not activity on sine die. So this was very different than what we've seen in the past. So we knew a few bills were going to be coming our way. We knew Senator Wagle, as well as some of her strong allies, were going to be pushing a bill limiting the governor's power. Apparently, they were having difficulties getting that together, even in the Senate. So in the meantime, then there were basically several bills that were then stuffed into a package or a bundle. And that's what we kept getting. We kept getting these bills that had several different things in them. Usually you don't want to mix that many topics. But like I said, it's kind of like a casserole. Whole lot of things put into a package that was sent over. And yes, throughout the process, well, on the House floor, we were not on general orders, so we could not debate any bills. All we could do was that anytime the Senate sent something over to us, we could either vote up or down, basically agree or disagree with it. We were not allowed to amend or debate. So what happened then in the Senate is basically they reduced the numbers of people who could have input on bills and took it down to a single faction, basically some of the most extremist leaders in the Senate. They and lobbyists crafted some of these bills with pet projects, that type of thing. So like I said, and all we could do then was vote up or down on them.
So could you explain a little bit about why you weren't able to discuss and why you could only vote up or down? What does it mean?
That decision had been made in advance by House leadership. I don't know if it was misinterpretation as far as what they thought was going to be coming our way, or was it done that way to put us in a bad position? Because when a bill comes over with several components to it and you can either vote up or down, the strategy there is, by the people putting the bill together is, okay, let's put these things in here that we want, that we know others don't want, that they don't like, but we'll try to spice it up by putting a couple really good things in there to make it hard for them to say no. Mm-hmm. So like I said, it puts, put us in the House in a pretty bad position then to go, okay, here's this bill with 5 pieces to it. I really like 2 things in here that are good, but these other 3 things are just absolutely horrible. So, it's kind of like a poison pill. You've got to figure out, okay, can I handle everything else in here that's horrible because of these bad pieces? In many of the cases, they were just ultimately horrible bills anyway.
Right. And so you had 9 of those huge package bills that came
Yeah.
over and
Yeah, I
passed.
believe so.
And then obviously Governor vetoed one this
Yeah,
past week, and that had to do with her executive powers during the pandemic.
correct.
Okay. And could you explain a little bit more about that? What exactly it limited to your understanding?
Part of the complication with that bill is it added more and more layers of bureaucracy. And when we're talking about a pandemic, and we know trying to get money out to people and employment, those types of things, that's critical. And we've been hampered by an antiquated system within the Department of Labor as far as trying to make that happen. But then there were so many layers that were added again to being able to get the CARES money out, the federal money out to different areas. Plus, we need that money deployed to our communities. So it was not a swift process that was put in there. Additionally, that particular bill limited the governor's power in a way different than we've ever seen in the past. By all means, we've had executive orders for floods, wildfires, those types of things. This is the first time in recent history when executive orders have been so scrutinized by what we call the Leadership Council. Governor Brownback issued a lot of different executive orders for different situations. I don't recall there being these types of hearings that we've had this year in regard to really scrutinizing all those different moves. So like I said, those are a couple of the components that were very interesting in that bill. And keep in mind, even President Trump has praised Laura Kelly's handling of the pandemic and what's happened here in Kansas. We've done quite well overall. When you take a look at the amount of supplies we've gotten, we are quite successful in being efficient, whereas the number of cases, the number of deaths, that's been particularly low. I think there are only 5 other states who have managed the crisis better, according to the numbers. So we've done quite well with what we've had.
Sure. What else, off the top of your head, if you can remember, what else was in that bill? Because to veto that portion, she had to veto the entire bill. You talked earlier about like the poison pill, right?
Yeah, I mean, those were the 2 big things. Like I said, the limiting of her power, which then would prevent us from getting federal money on a timely basis, which is a very big deal during a pandemic. So that, like I said, that was one of the main areas.
Okay. And so then in response to that order, or another declaration, I think is through the 10th of June. And that basically opened, quote unquote, opened up the state and gave power to the counties for restrictions.
Right.
Is that correct? And then called you all back on June 3rd. So you're heading back up there.
Yes. Topeka in the summer.
I know, right? What, yeah. So we'll Topeka summer, beautiful. Yeah. Well, you'll be all be in the State House. You'll be crammed in again.
Yes.
And I know there were a lot of complications this last time with moving everyone through and trying to be safe and follow guidelines. Has anything else been put in place that you know of to help follow the guidelines better this time?
Not that I know of. We probably won't hear until a day or 2 before. I do appreciate that House leadership did try to instill some ground rules or try to instill a process to make it safer. When we arrived at the Capitol, we had between 7:30 and 8 a.m. to basically push our button to say that we were there, that we were present. You always have to do that. So we had a half hour there so that people could manage, when they went in, when it's less crowded, that type of thing. Then it was set up so that you could basically push your present button, go back to your office, watch proceedings online. And then when it was time, we were divided into groups. Group 1 could go up and vote, and group 2. And it was set up that you could go in one particular door, go to your desk and vote, and then go out the other door so that hopefully you would minimize contact. And of course, it was also recommended that people wear masks. But I would tell you, I was shocked when I got there Thursday morning. I went up to the 3rd floor to the chamber to go ahead and push my present button. And the door where we were supposed to go in, there were just tons of people just standing there talking, no mask. So it's like, okay, I got on in, went ahead and pushed my present button. I thought, well, why aren't people leaving and going back to their office? We had determined, I'm a Democrat, so we had determined of our group, there would be a couple people who would stay on the floor just to kind of manage things and then text us to let us know when to come back or if there was something going on. But otherwise, we were told we could go to our offices. But like I said, there were just a number of people then just on the floor without masks, just talking and, 1 or 2 feet away, just like any other day. So I got out there pretty quick. I went down to my office and waited until I had to come back. As the day wore on, though, I will tell you pretty quickly, people just dropped the whole coming in at their particular time frame. A number of us kept doing it. But it was interesting. Like I said, I do appreciate that leadership tried to put some things in place to make a better situation. But, when there's a number of people there who don't believe in the virus, they don't believe in the risk, who aren't wearing masks, who aren't taking precautions, it makes it a bit of a difficult situation to manage.
Yeah. Boy, if healthcare or if Medicaid expansion would have been passed, not this year, but in previous sessions, then I would think that we'd be looking at a whole different environment right now.
Well, to that point, we lose close to $1 billion in federal funding every year. So we have a number of hospitals across the state, particularly in rural areas, that are just holding on. Now with COVID, because a lot of the hospitals have kind of had to restructure how they're operating, they have lost down some of their most profitable procedures during this time frame to potentially be ready for COVID. So that means that some of those places that were barely hanging on are even in a more precarious position. So yeah, what could funding have done for us? Potentially, allowed some of these areas to weather this storm a little bit better.
So I heard that Medicaid expansion did make an appearance.
Yeah.
On, what was it, the 21st?
Thursday. Was it Thursday still? I think it was on Thursday. Yes.
Whatever Thursday was. So it made an appearance. What happened there? What was that situation?
Yeah, essentially, we had passed it in the House last year. So we waited for the Senate to take it up. Senate never took the bill up, never took up. And the version that we passed in the House was the original Governor Kelly's plan. Again, there's not a lot of difference between the Governor Kelly plan as well as the compromise plan between Senator Denning and the governor. So we had passed the original last year, waited for the Senate to take it up, and they never did. So there was a procedural move in the Senate on Thursday. Because it had not been allowed to be brought to the floor, wasn't put on the agenda ever, there was a procedural move to bring it up above the line to allow a vote on it. Through that process, there were different votes that had to be taken to make that happen, to allow the debate. But the critical vote was basically, again, to allow it to come forward. And on that vote, only 16 people voted to have it come forward. And then that would be 24 against. And, of that group, again, Senator Denning, who had indicated he supported Medicaid expansion, voted against it, as well as several others. So at that point, we knew it was pretty much done for sine die as far as trying to get it through.
Sure. Now, you're going back on the 3rd to recraft legislation as it relates to the executive orders and the
Correct.
executive powers during the pandemic. Do you see, or could you foresee expansion coming up in any shape or form on the 3rd?
I doubt it, because what you find, like, I will vote for Medicaid expansion every time it comes to the floor.
Thank you.
Yes, but there are a number of legislators who, because they fear repercussions from their party or from extremist leadership, will say, well, I voted on it once, I can't vote on it again. So since we just had the vote in the Senate, again, because it's passed in the House, it's kind of on the Senate to do it. I doubt it, since we just, had the attempt this past week. I don't think they will, quote, as they say, have the appetite for it, which is very sad. Because like I said, I will vote for Medicaid expansion every single day that it comes forward. So, I won't say there aren't any possibilities, but what would have to happen is we would have to have a few of those senators who voted against it last week to get on board. And my proposal, or my my plea to them is, why not leave? If you're leaving, why not leave a decent legacy that helps people versus obstructing something that the majority of Kansans want? So like I said, I won't rule it out, but historically, based upon what we've seen, I doubt that they'll bring it forward.
Sure, and that's really sad to hear. There's been a lot of obstruction this year by leaders.
Oh, I mean, again, it has started in the committees. It's been on the floor of the House. It's been on the floor of the Senate. And I know too, people got so excited when Laura Kelly won, and obviously I was excited too. And again, obviously the alternative would have been horrible for Kansas. But when I saw the makeup of the legislature, I knew it would be very difficult to get work done. Because there are a number of people that basically the ideology and the attitude is it's their way or no way at all. There's a number of us, though, it's unfortunately a smaller number, who believe that collaboration is how you get to the answer. But when people are just when legislators are completely left out of the debate, when we're not allowed to have hearings, you just can't get to that point.
And essentially, what they've done, or what they did, was they cut out the voices of so many people because they did not allow their elected officials to debate or weigh in on what was
Absolutely.
happening.
Absolutely. I mean, it was all throughout session. It was on sine die. So you basically had a very small group of legislators crafting bills throughout the whole session, and then very much so on sine die. I mean, that was a very small group that was putting together the bills, along with lobbyists that were crafting those things. So yeah, the majority of legislators were totally left out of the process.
It's astonishing that so few legislators have the power to craft all of that legislation and then get it passed through.
Well, and that's the thing too. When we talk about committee chairs and how much power they have, of course, the people who, you have your leadership as far as the people in the House and the Senate who determine the agenda and what comes forward during session. So that's a lot of power. If there's a bill they don't like, they don't have to put it on the schedule. But that even goes into the committee level too. For example, like in the Elections Committee, I know last year or the year before, there were several bills that were great bills that could have helped make elections more accessible. But the chairperson was not in favor of any of them and just didn't schedule a hearing for them. It's what we call a pocket veto, when essentially there are bills out there, but their committee chair won't hear them. By the same token, on the healthcare committee, I've had a number of people who have asked about medicinal cannabis. And for several years, actually, there have been bills out there for medicinal cannabis for probably 7 years. Never, ever got a hearing until there was an interim hearing this past summer. But people would ask me, why can't we get a hearing on that bill? And it was simply because the chairs of the particular committees wouldn't hold a hearing on it. Again, pocket vetoes. So, and that's an example too, where, the people are ahead of the politics. There are a great number of people in support of moving forward on medicinal cannabis, but the committee chairs won't allow it. So I did bring it up 3 years ago on the House floor as an amendment, simply because I had a number of people in my district asking for it, and we hadn't been allowed a hearing. And I felt that, and I'm like this with pretty much any bill, if there's people out there supporting it, it should get a hearing. And then we as legislators can vote on it. We have our voice as far as voting against it, but to just shut down and obstruct the process, to me, that's just so wrong, and that's a huge issue.
So what's the answer?
A better mix of legislators.
Okay. So people should vote.
Yes, because again, I'm one of those people that I feel that extremes are dangerous. And when you have groups and factions who very much, like I said, have that ideology of it's my way or no way, you're not going to get anything done. Right. You need people of the background where they're used to working together, used to collaborating, solving problems, coming up with solutions. I tell people that one of my biggest surprises when I first went to Topeka was that there were no dry erase boards. And I was like, well, where do people and groups capture their ideas? And of course, to some degree, maybe leadership doesn't want people coming up with good ideas and solutions because they have their own agenda. But like I said, to me, that's, that's how you solve problems. You get your group of people together and you take a look at it and you come up with different solutions, and, you form it that way.
Sure. That makes sense. Collaboration is key.
Yeah.
Right? Different voices can come together and they can craft good public policy.
Absolutely.
So if your constituents have questions for you, how can they get a hold of you?
Oh, you know what? I put my phone number out there all over the place, as well as my email address. But yeah, my email address, there are a couple different ones. There's my house email address. My other email address is cindyforkansas@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. People message me there. That's all acceptable. I'm not as quick sometimes on getting the messages through like my inbox on Facebook. Sometimes I kind of miss those. But emailing, calling, all of that's good.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for your service to Kansas and your leadership at the State House.
Thank you all for what you do. We just need to keep making sure that people, I know the elections are on people's radars, right. But very importantly, I keep telling people, if you've gotten that application in the mail for your ballot, get that thing sent in. And I know you all are great about helping spread the word on the importance of voting, and the importance of voting by mail is going to be big this year.
Thank you. Yes, it is. And I tell everyone, go to ksvotes.org.
Yep.
Check your registration, change your registration, register if you're not registered, and you can request both of your advance ballots at the same time for the primary and the general. So thank you once again, Representative Holscher. We appreciate you, and hopefully you'll get to enjoy some sun today.
Sometimes you got to bring your own sun.
Right. The yellow going.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye. And thank you to you for watching today. Please remember to visit mainstreamcoalition.org, where you can learn more about how you can make a difference in this year's elections. One way is to walk with us. This year, we can't gather in a large group outside together, so as we've done in the past. So what we're doing is we're bringing the walk to wherever you are. Walk the Vote's going virtual on Saturday, June 13th at 10 a.m. You can learn more about our virtual walk and register your team today at walkthevote.org. Stay safe, stay engaged, and remember to do more than vote with Mainstream in 2020.